Hello, my name is Margaret Mandell, author of the debut memoir, And Always One More Time. I am so grateful to Boulder Bookstore for inviting me to participate in this author Q&A, and I'm here to answer Boulder Bookstore's wonderful questions, beginning with a brief synopsis of my book. It is 130 pages of memoir and a very simple story that begins with a death and ends with a wedding. It is a story of two extraordinary men, one living, one dead. Both are or have been my husband. Herb was my husband for 45 years, father of my children, soulmate, best friend, who died quite suddenly the day after my 65th birthday from a fast-moving disease. He is the first main character of the book. And after 2 years of writing love letters to Herb every day, thousands of letters, I met John, who is the second main character of this book. And the book covers the last 8 years of my life, beginning with Herb's death and my marriage to John. So there you have it, the whole story, but there's so much more. It begins with what inspired me to write this book. For the love letters were private. They were intended for no one. Perhaps my children, my two children, son Dan, daughter Lydia, might want to read them someday. But I took a writing class with a wonderful teacher who heard me read one of my letters aloud. And she said, "This is such a love story. This has to be a book." And so I began a 4-year process of revision and rewriting and rewriting and revision, and took 300,000 words of love letters and reduced them to 35,000 potent, swift-moving words that became "And Always One More Time." These are the words of Maya Angelou. Have enough courage to trust love one more time, and always one more time. Was this difficult? I would say it is the hardest thing that I have ever done, and also the most healing thing that I have ever done. Originally, I wrote to honor Herb and the life that we had. And soon the book evolved into universal themes and messages about resilience in the face of grief, about motherhood, about taking risks like online dating at my age and finding a new special someone. And because I found John, and because John, the college professor from Princeton, who allowed me to read my letters to Herb aloud to him, led me to fall in love with this compassionate, empathetic man and to discover who he was. At the end of this Q&A, I'll read you a very short passage from the book in which I'm just getting to know John, and I will describe him for you. I've been asked to tell you what, besides the writing, helped me to heal from my loss. And one of the very, very important steps that I took following Herb's death is that I pursued certification as a yoga teacher. And in the book, you will read all about that adventure, the challenges, the missteps, the humor in it, my doubts, my discoveries, and my redemption, all contributing to healing my broken body. And you will read about the effect of grief and death on a widow can result in brokenness, physical brokenness. And I healed from that, became a yoga teacher, which I am to this day. You can take my yoga classes on burnalong.com. They're offered all over the world, online. I have spoken to many, many men and women raw from the recent loss of a partner who know I have written this book. To every single one, I suggest sitting down each morning and writing to the lost loved one, to connect, to heal, to let the person go and keep the person close at the same time. I also recommend to anyone who has suffered this kind of searing loss of a life partner to give it time and to render kindness to oneself. Grieving cannot be rushed. It unfolds according to its own timetable and is individual for every person. There is no one way to do it. It's about listening to the stirrings of your heart and responding. I have read some incredible books recently, including one book that was touted to be comparable in its wisdom around the subject of death to the book I wrote. It's called The Beauty of What Remains by Steve Leader. And it's gorgeous and it's inspiring. And if you have experienced the loss, that's a good one to read. I am also told if you have experienced a loss, And Always One More Time is a wonderful book to read. I've been told recently by widows that my story is their story, that I make grief accessible, that when they have read my book, they have felt a sacred silence surround them as they read. See what it does for you. Another superb book by one of my favorite authors, Margaret Mandell, who is a fabulous writer for the New York Times, writer of memoirs, writer of opinion essays, an environmentalist, a nature writer. Her most recent book, The Comfort of Crows, I have absolutely loved. And finally, a superb memoir by my own mentor, Beth Kephart, who helped me find the arc of my narrative, find the story inside of me. Beth Kephart has written many memoirs and also textbooks on the craft of writing memoir, but her latest book is her crowning achievement, My Life in Paper by Beth Kephart. I loved it. I'm going to read you a very short excerpt from my book. My chapters are very short. My readers tell me they could read the entire book in a single sitting and did because they couldn't put it down. They would start reading the book thinking they would finish it up the next day, and the next thing they knew, they had read the entire book and it was 2 o'clock in the morning. Tender-hearted men who snore. This chapter is about a quarter way into the book. I have described what it was like to lose Herb through love letters to him, where I describe the events leading up to and immediately following his death. And you learn all about what kind of a man he was based on how he lived and how he looked death right in the eye. Herb told me that I would find a special someone when he was gone. I said never. He said yes. Women who have great marriages get married again. In fact, only 2% of widows over the age of 65 do remarry. So I guess I'm an outlier. In this chapter, I have recently found John on Silver Singles, an online dating website, and we have begun to go out together, and we have begun to stay together over the weekends, sleep together, discover one another. And so I write, tender-hearted men who snore. I've been here before, and it's not just his snoring, I think. We're sitting at breakfast in my dining room, John on his third cup of coffee, and I realize there's something familiar in John's penchant for storytelling. I remember Herb telling the same joke over and over, cracking himself up so much he couldn't finish the joke. John, too, repeats the same story again and again and bursts out laughing before anyone can decide if it's funny. He loves to start a sentence with, as you know, when usually you don't, and end it with, as it were, signaling irony. John, I say, you use the subjunctive so much, I am going to write as your epitaph. He was very fond of the subjunctive. He guffaws. I love that he can laugh at himself. Epitaph. Uh-oh, I must be falling in love. John is Scottish. His tender heart belies his massive physicality. He is barrel-chested with narrow hips and long, sinewy legs. There is girth around his middle, thickness in his neck, and a pleasant pudginess in his hands and feet. His shoulders and arms are muscle-bound from decades of playing tennis, as are his quads and glutes from so many years on the ski slopes of Colorado. He walks like he just got off a horse. His eyes grow moist when he hears an aria, a boy choir, or a poem by Robert Burns. Then he heads out to the tennis courts to hurl top spins and insults at his buddies. It's how men show they like each other, he says. Last night, after dinner, candles sputtering on the table, John began to sing the Sky Boat song, softly, as he once sang his boys to sleep when they were little. Speed, bunny boat, like a bird on the wing, On with the sailors cry, carry the lad who was born to be king over the sea to sky. Herb sang Jeremiah was a bullfrog to our kids at bedtime, thumping their mattresses like bongo drums. Joy to the fishes in the deep blue sea, joy to you and me. I wonder, what is it that draws me to strong, tender-hearted men who sing to their children, who find beauty in sadness and longing? Dare I fall in love again and risk losing John as I once lost Herb? I can't bear writing another obituary. If you feel that I have rendered a character on the page, including the narrator, then this memoir will read for you like a novel that happens to be true, that happened. And you may love most about this book this writer's unvarnished honesty, directness, and self-disclosure. Readers tell me it gives them permission to do the same. Again, I am so grateful to Boulder Bookstore for inviting me to chat with you briefly about my debut memoir. It will also be available on audiobook as well as ebook, hard copy, and paperback. My most amazing publisher was Atmosphere Press. Thank you for listening.